The road filled with red. Hundreds of British soldiers, veterans of real wars, moving in column, drums beating, the ground trembling under their boots. It was April 19th, 1775. They had already been to Concord. They had already seen what colonial militia could do. And now they were coming back through Menotomy. Every man who could fight had pulled back, except one. He was standing behind a stone wall, loading his musket, watching them come. He was not a young soldier full of fire and recklessness. He was not some desperate man with nothing to lose. He was 78 years old, by most accounts. His entire life had prepared him for a moment like this, whether he knew it or not. Most records say Samuel Whittemore was born in 1696, though some say 1694. The revolution wouldn't come for nearly 80 years. The men who started it hadn't been born yet, and in some cases, neither had their parents. What historical sources agree on is this: he was somewhere between 78 and 80 years old when he walked to that stone wall, and he had been alive longer than the idea of America itself. He was born in Charlestown, Massachusetts, the son of Samuel Whittemore Sr. and Hannah Ricks. He grew up in a colony that was already learning what it meant to resist. He served the crown, not as a British regular, but as a colonial soldier in the 3rd Massachusetts Regiment, a provincial militia that fought Britain's wars against the French. He was a loyal subject who had given years to the empire. That history makes what happened at that wall in 1775 harder to forget. By the time he settled on a farm in Menotomy, what we call Arlington, Massachusetts today, he had already seen more war than most men alive. He had a wife, he had land, he had a life that by any reasonable measure was finished with violence. But Menotomy was not a quiet place to be in 1775. And Samuel Whittemore was not built for quiet. To understand what happened to that stone wall, you have to go back 30 years. In 1745, Samuel Whittemore was in his late 40s, an age when most soldiers have long since put down their weapons. He picked his up. He enlisted as a private in Colonel Jeremiah Moulton's 3rd Massachusetts Regiment and sailed to Nova Scotia. His target, the fortress of Louisbourg, a French stronghold on Cape Breton Island that had been straggling British trade and threatening the colonies for years. The siege was brutal. The fortress fell. And when it did, Whittemore walked away with something he would carry for the next 30 years, an ornate sword taken from a French officer. Accounts say the officer, in Whittemore's own words, had died suddenly. He brought that sword home to Menotomy. History records, though some documentation is limited, say that Whittemore may have gone back to war again in 1758 at the Second Siege of Louisbourg, this time under the command of General James Wolfe. He would have been in his early 60s. He also may have served against Chief Pontiac in 1763. Some accounts say he came home from Pontiac's war with a pair of pistols taken from a defeated warrior. What is certain is this: by the time the Revolution arrived, Samuel Whittemore was not a farmer who had once been a soldier. He was a soldier who had been farming while he waited. The sword from Louisbourg was still in his house. The pistols were still loaded. Samuel Whittemore did not need April 19th to choose a side. He had already chosen. When Parliament passed the Stamp Act, the citizens of Menotomy, like every town in Massachusetts, seethed with anger. And in 1766, after the act was repealed, the town of Cambridge elected Whittemore to a committee to prepare instructions for their representative to the General Court. He was in his early 70s. He had opinions, and his neighbors trusted them. 2 years later, he was elected delegate to the Massachusetts Committee of Convention, a gathering that Parliament considered potentially unlawful. He went anyway. And in December of 1772, Samuel Whittemore was elected to the Cambridge Committee of Correspondence. The committee that year put its position plainly, that if the colonists ceased to assert their rights, the chains of slavery would be fast riveted upon them. He was not a man who wrote pamphlets. He was not an orator, but he showed up, he voted, and he meant what he signed. By April of 1775, he had been fighting this battle, politically, deliberately, systematically, for nearly a decade. When the muskets finally came out, Samuel Whittemore had been ready for years. The night before Lexington, his wife Esther began packing their belongings. She wanted them to leave, to ride out the coming violence at her stepson's home, away from the road. He told her he was going up to town to meet the regulars, and he picked up his sword. Here's what actually happened. The British were retreating from Concord, hundreds of regulars, exhausted, angry, taking fire from militia all along the road. A relief brigade under General Percy had been sent from Boston to extract them. Together, the column passing through Menotomy numbered well over 1,000 men. They were burning homes along the way. Samuel Whittemore watched them from his fields. He went inside. He came back out with everything he owned that could kill a man: his musket, the French sword from Louisbourg, and 2 pistols that may have been trophies from Pontiac's war. He walked to a stone wall on what is now Mystic Street, near the corner of Chestnut. He crouched down. He waited. The 47th Regiment of Foot came down that road. He let them get close. He fired his musket and killed a soldier. He drew both pistols and fired them. He killed or mortally wounded at least 2 more. Then they reached him. They shot him in the face. They bayoneted him, at least 6 times by documented accounts. They clubbed him with musket butts. They left him face down on the road. One soldier reportedly said, "We have killed the old rebel." They kept marching. The Battle of Menotomy that day cost the British 40 dead and 80 wounded, the bloodiest fighting of the entire April 19th campaign. Samuel Whittemore had contributed his share. When the shooting stopped, neighbors went to collect the body, and when they found him on the ground, he was trying to reload his pistol. They carried him to a local tavern, Cooper's Tavern, where Dr. Tufts of Medford was treating the wounded. The doctor examined him, shot through the face, bayoneted multiple times, beaten with musket butts. He reportedly had 14 separate wounds. The doctor's assessment was straightforward. These wounds were mortal. There was nothing to be done. He sent Samuel Whittemore home to die with his family. He didn't die. He recovered. The musket ball had torn away part of his cheekbone. He would carry those wounds for the rest of his life. He reportedly never expressed regret. Samuel Whittemore lived, depending on which birth record you trust, well into his 90s. He died in February of 1793. The revolution he fought for had been won for a decade. The nation he bled for had been fully formed. But there was still a question that no document answers. The British soldiers who left him for dead that day were professionals. They had done the math. One old man behind a stone wall. Why didn't he do the same math they did? In 2005, 230 years after that stone wall, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts officially proclaimed Samuel Whittemore the state's official historical hero. There is a question that follows Samuel Whittemore through history. Why? He was pushing 80 years old. His neighbors had pulled back. His wife begged him to leave. There was no tactical reason for one man to hold that wall. The battle would be won or lost without him. But that question assumes that what happened that day was a military calculation. It wasn't. Samuel Whittemore had spent decades in actual wars. He knew exactly what a column of British regulars could do to one man behind a stone wall. He knew the odds. He picked up the sword anyway. The committee meetings, the Stand Back protests, the years of political work, those were the arguments. April 19th was when the argument ended. He was born a British subject. He spent years serving the crown. And somewhere along the way, in the meetings, in the fields, watching his neighbors, watching his country being assembled piece by piece, he decided that what was being built here was worth more than what he had been born into. That decision cost him his cheekbone and almost his life. He never said it was the wrong one. 250 years later, we are still living in what he bled for.